Morning. Today's shir in Rambam is Perik Zayin, Perik Ches, and Perik Tes of Hilchos Nedarim. So before we get to the Rambam that we're going to discuss today, in short, we'll make a short introduction, Akdama, on something that is in general related to Shittas Rambam in Din and Nedarim, and it relates to halacha that we're going to discuss a little bit later on. So, there's two places in the Torah. This is a general introduction, a fundamental knowledge that everybody should know regarding Nedarim. There are two places in the Torah that the Torah mentions the mitzvah of fulfilling your vows. First in Bamidbar, in Mates, Vaydaber Moshe Rashi Hamates L'nei Yisrael Leimer. Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes. This is what God commanded. Ish ki yidor neder Hashem. If a person makes a vow to God, or yishav hashvur makes a oath, lesser isar al nafshay, to prohibit something on himself. Loi yachel devara, he cannot violate his words. Whatever comes out of his mouth, he should do. That's one pasuk. Then later on, the Gemara in the Torah in Dvarim says, "Kisider neder l'Hashem." If you make a vow to God, l'Hashem lekecha lo yisa'acher l'shalma, you cannot delay fulfilling your vow. Ki dorish yideshenu Hashem lekecha mimach, God will demand from you, and this will be a infraction. And if you stop to, because of this, you won't make a vow, there won't be a sin. Moitza svasecha tishmer v'asisa. Whatever comes out of your lips, you should do. Kasher nodarta l'Hashem alekecha, just like you made a vow to God. Nedavar shedibarta b'ficha. So these are two separate components of the mitzvah of Nedarim. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs, Mitzvahs Asay Tzadik Dalet 94, he says as follows in a positive mitzvah. L'kayim, what is the mitzvah of Nedarim? L'kayim kol ma shekibalnu al nafshenu b'dibur, to fulfill everything that we accepted on ourselves in speech. Mishvua v'neder utzdaka v'hakarban. From a shvua, from an oath, from a neder, from a vow, to charity or a sacrifice, vizulas or anything else. V'hu amra yis'ala, and this is what God told us in the Torah. Moitza svasecha tishma, whatever comes out of your lips, you should do. Amna makavonim kol mash zacharti lach shmitz asay l'kayim kol mash adam l'chayav l'nafshay be'eze davar shiyam advarim. The intent, says the Rambam, is to fulfill whatever you say. And he says it a second time, not only Moitza svasecha tishma, and he says again, so the Ramban in the Hasagis to Sefer HaMitzvahs attacks, or he argues on the Rambam strongly, and he says, what's going on over here? The Rambam took two separate mitzvahs, two separate positive mitzvahs, and he made them into one mitzvah. He made them into, and that's why there's two separate parshas, because there's two components. The pasuk, when it comes to Moitza Svasecha Tishma, the pasuk in Dvarim is referring to when a person obligates himself to bring a carbon, or charity. Like it says in the Gemara in Nedarim Daf Zayin, Beficha, Kashanadaita Beficha, Zutztaka. But when it comes to a neder rishus, something a mundane oath, or not oath, vow, a mundane what a person obligates himself to on a neder or a shvua, that's not a mitzvah. That's a different parsha. That's a parsha of in Parshas Matos. Lesser Isar al Nafshay, etc., etc. So what's going on? Why is the Rambam combining these two separate components? Okay, so, and the Ramban explains, it's not just a technical question. There's a tremendous nafkamina, there's a tremendous difference in din between the two types of nedarim, and therefore between the types, the personal nedarim, personal vows, and the carbon and stucca vows. And therefore, that this proves that it's two separate positive mitzvahs. When it comes to a mitzvah, says the Ramban, a person doesn't have to mention the word neder, I promise. The minute, for example, if a person says, this animal is a carbon, or this vessel, I don't is for bedek habayis, is for the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, or this is tzedakah laniyim, this is charity to poor people. Says the Ramban, a person doesn't have to mention the word, I promise to give this to this carbon or this vessel or this tzedakah. That's included in the words mitzvahs asecha tishmar, and also there's a concept of leisachel l'shalom, which we'll see in a minute. But when it comes to nidrei reshus, when it comes to a mundane vow, for example, a person doesn't want to eat meat, whatever, all the other vows that are not mitzvahs. So there's a whole sugya. Anybody that learned Nedarim knows there's a concept of yadis Nedarim, kinin Nedarim. You have to mention the word I promise, or in various ways. The Gemara deals. The famous Gemaras in Nedarim, how the Gemara deals with Yodis and Kinuyim, etc., etc. So, for example, if a person says, "I will not eat this piece of bread or this donut," or a person says, "I will go to this place," or a person says, "I will give a gift to this wealthy man," since he didn't use any wording of neder, he didn't use any wording of a vow, he's not obligated to do it. So there's a tremendous difference between nidrei hekdesh and nidrei chulin. Okay. So one approach to answer the hasaga of Rambam, I saw one of the Rosh Yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Avram Shapiro from Yeshivas Merkaz Harav. He has a very interesting answer. He says as follows. He says the Rambam's the understanding of the Rambam is, of course, there's a difference between the two types of nedarim, but when it comes to a neder stam, when it comes to a vow relating to mundane issues, if a person doesn't say explicitly that this is a vow, like I promise not to eat this, or I promise to give this amount to this person, we don't know if he's serious. We don't know if he really means it. However, when a person says carbon, when a person says I'm giving a sacrament, I'm bringing a carbon, or when a person says I'm giving a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, or when a person says I'm going to give tzedakah, the mere fact that he mentions these concepts, the word carbon, tzedakah, and vessel, that itself shows that he's very serious. In other words, we're going over here according to the intent of what he's really saying, and so therefore the nafkamina is very clear. The difference in how a person speaks is what he speaks. So when it comes to carbon, when it comes to tzedakah, when it comes to bedek habayis, he's serious, and therefore it's obviously a neder. When it comes to I'm not going to eat this donut, he could say it every day what he wants, but 3 minutes later he's going to eat the donut, or he'll eat the meat, or he'll violate anything else because he wasn't serious. So therefore, what the Rambam is saying, obviously there's a difference between the two types of nedarim, but it goes on the intent, not so much on the concept. Another hasaga, another attack or refutation that the Ramban has on the Rambam on his approach to nedarim is the concept of bal ta'acher. How long do we have to wait before we have violated our vow? So we know that when it comes to a shuas bitui or a nidrei bitui, just a person expresses himself that he wants to do something, the halacha is he's not violating bal ta'acher. In other words, technically that's what we're going to get to in a few seconds. Technically, he doesn't violate if it goes by a very long time. If a person, for example, swears that he's going to give a wealthy person $100, or he's going to go to a certain place, he doesn't have to do it before the turn of the cycle of 3 Yomim Tovim, Shalosh Regalim. But when it happens, when he can do it, he'll do it. And this is what the Gemara says in Bava Kama Daf Pei. It's a Gemara that we're going to deal with in a minute. So if a person makes a vow to buy a house or to marry a woman in Eretz Yisrael, we don't obligate him to do it right away until he finds somebody that's worthy. He finds a worthy wife or a good deal, good property. However, when it comes to nidrei karbanis, it's a clear pasuk that there's a lav of bal ta'acher. If we violate if it passes 3 Yomim Tovim, Pesach Sukkos, Pesach Shavuos Sukkos, or any other type of combination, and he didn't violate and he didn't bring the carbon. He violates Baal Ta'achar. So this is a refutation of the Ramban. On the Rambam, showing that it's two separate mitzvahs. So what's the pshat? How come the Ramban, this is a very strong kasha on the Rambam. So now we're getting to the Rambam of today's shir. The Rambam in Hilchos Nedarim, Perek Ches, Halacha Ches, which is in today's shir, writes as follows: Kol ha-neder ha-nishba, whoever makes a vow, royim dvarim should be glolam nishba nodar. We see whatever the concept, or we see what the context that he made a vow, and we learn from it what his intent was, and we go we go according to the context and not what he said. And for example, he says whoever made a vow to marry a woman or to buy a house, etc., or to go on a trip or to go on a cruise, and we don't obligate him to do it right away, because we understand that he meant the appropriate woman, the appropriate house, etc., etc. And the Rambam brings Maisa Be'isha, a story with a woman, Shenadra, she made a vow that whoever she will marry, whoever asks her to marry him, and people that weren't worthy of her took the opportunity and asked her, and the Chachamim says the Rambam, she didn't mean that. She meant to say whoever is worthy, that is the person that. So basically, this is how we can answer the Ramban's Hasaga, that it doesn't mean that there's no it doesn't mean that there's no Baal Ta'achar in Nidrishus. There is a concept of Baal Ta'achar in Nidrishus, but we go according to her intent. And we measure, or we try to estimate what a person's das is, and we say that this is how he meant it, that there is a neder and he has to do it, but he has to do it when it's appropriate for him. When it comes to a carbon, there's a technical din that the three regalim, you have to bring the carbon, but that doesn't mean to say that according to the Rambam there is no din of Baal Ta'achar. It's a very interesting pshat, because according to this, the Rambam will hold that there is Baal Ta'achar and Nidrei Stam on a regular neder, which is a talk in and of itself. I'm going to spend the next few minutes that we have left on a more lemaisa dike shaila as it relates to this. So the question is, if a technical question, a halacha dike question that the poskim, the Chuvas write about extensively. If a person made a promise to eat a certain meichel, he says, you know what, I want to once and for all, I want to try duck. I want to try duck. I promise I'm going to eat duck, or I promise I'm going to go rollerblading. When does he have to do this? Does he have to do it right away? Does he have to do it right away? Does he have to go immediately and to a restaurant or to a butcher store and buy a duck, or rollerblading, or do whatever you can? So Taka is a big machlekes hapaskim. I won't bore you with the technicalities of the names, because there's a lot of names, but basically the Rivash writes that if a person swore to marry off his daughter, and soon, or he swore, I'm marrying off my daughter, I guess that means that he's going to marry off his daughter, and he didn't make the time. Says the Rivash, he has to do it right away, because right away he has a shvur. The Machne Ephraim argues on this. The Machne Ephraim says no, because the Rivash brings a raya. If a person says, I'm going to be, it's important to remember these words. The Gemara says in the Nedarim, Daf Gimel Amid Beis, I will not leave this world until I become a Nazir. Says the Rivash, he's a Nazir right away. So if Mirza Raya, if a person makes a neder, etc., to marry off his daughter, he has to do it right away. Says the Machne Ephraim, no. Over there, he used the word Loi Ipater Min Ha'olam. I will not leave this world. So what happens? Chas v'shalom, if a person dies, he violated those words. But when it comes to a neder stam, and he doesn't, let's say Chaz v'Shalom, he passes away before eating duck, or he passes away before rollerblading. So that wasn't einus, because he didn't say, I will not leave this world until I eat duck. I will eat duck. So there's a very subtle difference between how we we see a machlek, interesting machlek sapaskim. And the same thing has to do with, there's a lot of other tshuvas that deal with this, tshuvas Emek Yeshua, Siman Yutes. And again, he says the same, he makes the same chilik between Leipatim and Eilim. Interestingly enough, there's this has to do with the halacha. The Magen Avram, the Shulchan Aruch Harchaim, Siman Tov Kuf Samach Ches, writes, if somebody makes a neder that he is going to fast a certain amount of fasts. We are familiar with the Igeres HaTshuva. Person, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Igeres HaTshuva, if a person wants to at least one time in his life fulfill a certain cycle of fasts, of the Tanesim, for a certain Aveda, says the Alter Rebbe, he can push it off to the winter days. So if we want, we can at least deal with that some other time and make a deal that Alter Rebbe will also agree that he doesn't have to do it miyad. So the Shulchan Aruch and Tov Kuf Samach Ches says, if somebody makes a neder to fast a certain amount of fasts, he can push it off till the winter, and he could borrow a long day and pay back a short day, etc. And so we see from here clearly from the Shulchan Aruch that he doesn't have to do it right away. The Magen Avram asks on this. The Magen Avram is worried about the Gemara we said before, Shami Yamus, and the Mefarshim explain that as we said before, the difference is how you say, how you word it. Just one final thought, or one final point in this issue. There are those that want to explain the difference between the chiyuv of doing something right away is when it's a mitzvah or when it's a mundane thing, going back to the very beginning of our shir. So when it comes to marrying off a woman, like the Rivash is dealing with, or when it comes to buying a house in Eretz Yisrael, it's a mitzvah. So therefore, the mitzvah right away gets into the component, as we said before, that there is a chiyuv of Baal Ta'acher, even though it doesn't refer to Baal Ta'acher only by a carbon. Similar to by tzedakah, it says Leisa Acher L'Shalmei, because you have to do it right away. But the only point was that in a certain case, when her intent was or the issue is to find the appropriate husband or the appropriate property in Eretz Yisrael, so we say that outweighs the chiyuv of Baal Ta'acher, because that was his intent. The main part of his vow was to find an appropriate, or that she should find an appropriate spouse or an appropriate property. However, when it comes to nidrei reshus, I'm going to eat duck, I'm going to rollerblade, etc., there's not a chiyuv to do it right away, because that doesn't. There isn't a chiyuv to do it right away, because there is no Baal Ta'acher in such a case. Gave a little bit of an overview on the general das Shittas Rambam on Nedarim, and in that applicable context even till today. Zai Gizam.